question now.
Oh, I see. I didn't want the audience at home to know. We have to have a commercial, and we'll meet these doctors and see if this is true. It's true.
Doctors.
Which is which?
Dr. Roger Ulrich, Dr. B.S. Skinner. I'll introduce them
Gentlemen?
here.
Now, how should we begin? If I ask you, first, what's the correct way to refer to this? Behaviorism, behaviorist science, or behavioral?
Probably any one of them would do.
All right.
You take your pick.
Okay, I'll call them all three then.
Okay.
How does it work? What is the technique?
Well, I think what Mary was referring to is a particular procedure that has been around for a long time, that of rewarding or reinforcing behavior when it occurs. A particular kind of behavior that you want to occur again. If you are very careful to see some kind of a reinforcement follows it, it increases in frequency. And what we're starting to see today is the taking from the laboratory some of these principles of behavior and systematically applying them in education.
And are you sort of pointing out the fact that in the classroom, if a child even gives the correct answer, or if he even just acts in the way you like, you will reward him on the spot with the candy or...
Right. One of the things that we're doing in the experimental nursery is defining very carefully the behaviors that we want and seeing to it that children are rewarded when they perform this response. And just like in the laboratory, the frequency of that response goes up. It's very much a case of attending in a positive way to those behaviors that you want to see more of.
Well, how widely do you want to spread this? Is it that you are devising a school of learning or a learning system in which the key is reward and that all good behavior is rewarded and bad behavior is not? Is that too simple a way of putting it?
Well, it'd be nice. That's one way of doing it. That's what Dr. Skinner talked about in the book Walden, too, of attending more to positive reinforcement than the aversive control that's quite typically used in educational settings.
It's not easy to do, of course. Don't think that we have all the answers yet. But you can give children some positive reason for studying and learning something. We don't do it in the school system today, and it's just a question of finding out what you want the child to do and making sure that there's some good reason for doing it. And the reason means what he gets out of it. Sometimes you can use some of the natural consequences of getting an education. That's what John Dewey. One thing that teachers and parents tend to do is let well enough alone. If a kid's behaving well, you don't go near him, and you only go near him when he starts misbehaving. Well, if going near him is rewarding, then you're rewarding the wrong thing and neglecting a chance to reward the child for the right thing.
What is the argument against this? I assume it's that, to oversimplify it, you bribe someone to behave well and...
No, it's not really bribery. If you say this is bribery, you're really confessing a great deal, because a bribe is getting someone to do something that he doesn't want to do, or a reason for not doing. But there's no reason for not learning, so you're not really bribing a child for learning unless he has some particular reason for not learning. This is not a bribery. Bribery involves a contract. You say, do this and I'll do this. Well, we don't use these rewards that way. We simply wait until you see a student or child doing something, and then somehow or other, just manna from heaven, something nice happens. You don't say, I did this, I gave you this because you were behaving well. That would spoil the whole thing.
You don't say that.
No, you
let
don't.
them make the connection.
Yes, and they don't even need to verbalize it at all. They may not know what they're doing or why they're getting what they're getting.
Actually, bribe.
I was just going to ask about this escalation. Let's say a 4-year-old child. He's perfectly satisfied with a piece of candy or a pat on the head, perhaps. But what happens when the child grows older? What sort of bribes or rewards can you give him? Could you get to a point where a child is only content with a sports car?
Well, to begin with, let's go back and take out the bribe again, because the dictionary definition says that a bribe is for illegal behavior, and teaching a child reading is really not illegal behavior. So we're trying to reward behavior that our culture is calling for. The idea of telling a child you should learn to read because someday it's going to really pay off for you and it's really going to be something you need to do is a long way off. And so when you're starting at a very early age, it's important to find something that the child does find reinforcing. And a lot of things are reinforcing. You can't say that this will be the reinforcer for all children. You kind of scout around, you say this child likes this child likes that. And you make that contingent upon some approximation of better reading behavior. And then you start to fade these out in a way. And after a while, you make the schedule of maybe sweets that we're giving the children. They don't come quite as often. But all the time, there's a lot of this, hey, that's very good. And one of the things you see in the experimental nursery, and a lot of schools that are trying this, is a lot of social reinforcement. We're not being stingy with giving rewards.
Maybe another way of understanding this when we come back would be to ask you where you differ with Freudian theory, which at least most people have some idea of, and maybe that would help. We'll be back after this, some kind of reward here.
It's the newest, grooviest, greatest. 25 original big hits, all by the original top stars who made them famous. Sonny and Cher, Everly Brothers, The Grassroots. The Deep Purple, Peggy Scott and JoJo Benson. The Impressions. 'Cause we're winners. The Occasions, Love and Spoonful. The Tams. Be young, be foolish. Andy Kim, The Association, Mama Cass. Dream a little dream. The Dells, The Animals, Steppenwolf. On a magic carpet ride. Yes, 25 original big hits, all by...
Anyone remember where we were?
Yes.
I was going to ask you, do you reject the theories of, say, Freudian psychoanalysis and the theory of the unconscious mind? It seems to me that you are attempting to deal with things that are quite clear and on the surface and tangible.
Well, I don't. We try to find some external reasons why people behave as they do, because then you can change those reasons and get people to behave in better ways. Freudian in general looks for some inner cause. You behave because of the way you feel. But then, of course, he has eventually to explain why you feel that way, and that gets him back out to the same external causes that we're dealing with. I'm not at all worried about the unconscious. I think all behavioral processes work essentially in an unconscious way. The problem is what consciousness is all about. I accept the unconscious in Freud's terms very readily, very happy about it. Quite a little trick to explain why people become conscious of why they're behaving as they are. But to begin with, they're not. They behave because of the conditions under which they're behaving.
Well, Doctor, isn't it possible, let's say if we followed your theories and we were just dealing with people's behavior, that you could have well-behaved youngsters or well-behaved adults, but they would be deeply unhappy and deeply disturbed people?
Oh, no. You think that behavior is not really a reflection of these things you call feelings?
Well, one of the classic examples is the person who pays great attention, let's say, to their parent, and it comes out under analysis that they hate their parent, but they're the model child.
I wondered about that sort of thing, too. They maybe have to go into quite abnormal psychology, but maybe not. You don't have to go so far as the young man who Truman Capote wrote about, who decided that at 16 he would murder his parents, and did, and was a model child up to that point. There aren't a lot of those, I know, but do you leave that kind of aberration to another school of psychology?
Not at all. If something like that happens, or if a child turns against his parents, whereas up to that point he's been a very well-behaved child, that is a misbehavior, and we want to account for it, and we would eventually account for it in the same way Freud does, except that Freud would stop on the way back. He would say, yes, the child hated his parents, and that's why he did this. But then we have to ask, why did he hate his parents? So you go back and you find that they were rough with him and punished him and gave him very little freedom and so on. And that is why he turned on them, you see. You don't have to go through the feeling stage. Of course, he felt something all the time this was going on. He felt his own body and the effects which these conditions have had on his body. But he doesn't turn against his parents because he hates them, unless you want to go and explain what you mean by hating your parents, and that goes back to the way they treated you. So really, the thing that you care about, and this is really what Freud pointed out, the connection between a sudden, what seemed like an inexplicable turning against one's parents and something that happened when you were very young.
I think Freud introduced us, or not him per se, but that there were reasons for behavior. And oftentimes the reasons are that things are occurring in your environment that maintain it. And perhaps what happens sometimes in the counseling situation is that we reinforce, again, those behaviors we'd rather get rid of. For example, the state hospital at Anna State Hospital in Illinois, they found that rather than pay attention to the patients when they were behaving abnormally, they started paying more attention to them and actually ignored abnormal behavior, paid more attention to them when they were behaving in a more normal way. You stop hallucinating and things like this, and then people came and paid attention. They actually started to make tokens contingent upon doing the kinds of things that the culture called for. So I think that this is looking at reasons that are here and now in the environment, and actually behavior starts to change as a function of how one receives consequences for certain kinds of behavior.
One experiment done in a ward of schizophrenic women, and it was taking 3 attendants a whole half hour to get these women into the dining room at mealtime. And they simply changed the situation and told the attendants to pay no attention to them at all. If they got to the dining room, they ate, and if they didn't, they didn't, and there was no other food. Well, very few got there the first meal, but a great many did the second, and everyone did the third. I think there was one holdout for several days, but she was overweight anyway. And eventually, they were all going in within 30 minutes. Then they cut it down to 25, then to 20, then to 15, 10, and 5. At the end of the experiment, in 5 minutes, the whole ward was going right into the dining room and sitting down. Well, now, it's a marvelous advance from the point of view of administration and how many attendants you have to hire. The point was that to begin with, the attendants were getting a lot of fun out of being annoying. The patients were annoying the attendants. And when ordinarily during the day, the attendants can pay no attention, but when the attendants have got to get them into the dining room, then you just give power to the patients. Now they can annoy the attendants, you see, by going the wrong way or something. So every 3 times a day, you were giving the patients a chance to get a big bang out of causing trouble. But when you change that, and when a little starvation, institutional food becomes reinforcing, they have a perfectly good reason to go to the dining room, and they do. And I think they're much more dignified and happier people when they do.
Doctor, I would like to just return to one thing.
Can you ask the question, and then we'll take a break and come back with the answer?
Okay. We're talking now about patients. But to get back to what we were talking about before, could you actually eliminate murder, assault, violence in a person?
We'll have to wait for the answer to that. I'll think about it. The world will wait. We'll be back in a moment.
Phyllis, it's Mother. Just calling to make sure you don't get me any gifts. What could I need? You have your family. You need your money. Even if you see a Rolf's double-duty envelope. You know, the one with removable checkbook card case. You can't miss it. It has 16 windows for credit cards and pictures of your beloved family. A thumb slot pocket so you can get at your favorite credit cards easily. A snap-happy adjustable closure, an outside coin pocket, a zipper bill holder, but I don't really need it. I have so many needs, dear. Or, if you see the Rolf's telescopic cigarette case, don't get it. Think of yourself first. I always have. Even if the telescopic fits all brands of telescopes to hold my Super Kings and comes in all sorts of colors, especially yellow. Think of yourself, Phyllis.
Rolf's, quality leather accessories. Perfect gifts for everyone, even reluctant receivers.
From society?
I think Roger ought to tell you about the experiment that's been done at the National Training School for Boys in Washington, where, as a matter of fact, some of the subjects were murderers, so that's part of the answer to your question.
Yeah, actually, what they did there was, again, to put a reinforcement system into effect, and they started to...
What do you mean by reinforcement system?
Well, they actually made a token system. A lot of the things that were given free in prisons a lot of times, like to see the movies, this, that, and the other thing, were now made contingent upon more academic behavior, more appropriate behaviors.
Right.
And after a while, they were able to parole some of these individuals in a way that into a society that was approximated back in the training school. I think we have many examples of taking people who've had a long history of problem behavior and doing some dramatic things in bringing about changes. To say that we're going to be able to answer these problems, I think, might be presumptuous. On the other hand, if we could start to work with children younger in a preventive rather than a curative way, like we wait till there are problems in state mental institutions, in homes for the juvenile delinquents and so forth. We're going in there and trying to change things at that level, as opposed to greater efforts to working with children at very young ages, to give them some of the skills that will put them in touch with the rewards that our culture has. A lot of the problems are that the kids don't know how to read, and then they start getting rewarded for things that maybe later on the culture doesn't really want.
At some point, you have paid students to go to school in your work?
Schools have been doing that for a long time. They call them scholarships and so forth. Yes, we instituted a program. We have a child development center where we're going to work with young children from the ghetto, and we're working with some young black leaders on our campus who are going to go in and actually take over schools, and they have to pick up some of the skills. So in training them, we set up a program, again taught by students, to actually say, all right, you're here at 8 o'clock on Monday night, you're here on time, the deal will be you get so much, and so forth. It's like a contract that I have with the university. You come and teach, and you come and do certain things, perhaps one like a lot of the people here have.
What about the argument against that the student should be made to realize that the virtue is its own reward in going to school, and that money is not...
We certainly aren't teaching them that now. They're not getting any virtue out of going to school now at all. And of course, you don't want them to go through life expecting to be paid every time they say the right answer, that sort of thing. You in education, you have to use contrived, spurious rewards, but you have also to take those out of the picture so that the student can transfer to daily life, so that the natural reinforcers are now going to take over. There was a case in which a child had been born blind with cataracts, and when operated upon...
Apparently they're trying to tell us something unsubtly. We'll be back.
Scott towels are the world's most difficult towels to throw away.
It's like that we're in a hopeless botch in terms of time, and we have now 55 seconds left or something. I assume that your system does not claim to have all the truth, and that you want to reform all schools of psychology or whatever to this, but that you have had a great deal of success with it, and that you hope it will do, in turn, a great deal of good. Is that too fatuous for a wrap-up?
No, I think that's fine. I'll settle for that.
Maybe you can come back. I know it's difficult to answer now because we did run out of time. What can people read on this subject?
Walden, too.
Yes, Walden, too.
Which...
It's out for some time.
Yes, it has.
Technology of teaching has just recently come out by Dr. Skinner.
It's all in Walden, too.
And is it true?
The world of the future.
Beg your pardon?
Walden, too, is the world of the future.
Yeah. Is it true that your son can read college-level books at the age of 5? Or 6?
Yeah, that was true. There's a lot of kids that can do that.
Yeah. That's remarkable. We'll be back. Or not, depending. Who knows?
If you think there's only one brand of oatmeal...